Welcome to State Line Rig. Today, we're exploring the history of Pennsylvania, from colony to industrial power, from the most incredible places to the hidden details you need to know. Let's get started. Imagine a colony founded as a refuge for religious freedom that would eventually become the birthplace of American independence, the home of Gettysburg, and one of the greatest industrial powerhouses in the world. A place where Quakers once governed a peaceful experiment in self-government, where iron furnaces transformed forests into industry, where coal powered entire cities, and where Pittsburgh's steel mills helped build America's skyscrapers, bridges, railroads, and weapons. This is Pennsylvania. But Pennsylvania's transformation from a colonial experiment into an industrial giant was anything but simple. It was shaped by indigenous nations, European settlers, religious freedom, revolution, slavery and abolition, immigration, railroads, coal, oil, iron, steel, and millions of workers who arrived searching for a better life. So how did Pennsylvania become one of the engines of America's rise? The story begins long before William Penn ever arrived. For thousands of years, the land that would become Pennsylvania was home to indigenous peoples, including the Lenape, Susquehannock, Shawnee, and others. The forests, rivers, and fertile valleys supported hunting, farming, fishing, and extensive trade networks. Then European powers began competing for the region. Swedish and Dutch settlements appeared along the Delaware River before English control expanded. But the most important European figure in Pennsylvania's early history would be a man with a very different vision: William Penn. In 1681, King Charles II granted Penn a huge tract of land as repayment of a debt owed to his father. Penn was a Quaker, a religious minority that had faced persecution in England. He imagined something unusual, a colony where people of different religious backgrounds could live with greater freedom. Penn called the territory Pennsylvania, meaning roughly Penn's Woods. He arrived in 1682 and established Philadelphia, a name meaning city of brotherly love. The city was carefully planned, with broad streets, and became one of the most important ports in colonial America. Pennsylvania quickly attracted immigrants from England, Wales, Germany, Scotland, Ireland, and elsewhere. The colony's religious tolerance made it particularly attractive to people seeking freedom from Europe's religious conflicts. But Pennsylvania was never simply a peaceful utopia. The colony expanded onto indigenous lands, and relations between settlers and native nations became increasingly complicated. At the same time, slavery existed in colonial Pennsylvania, even though Quakers and other religious groups gradually became prominent critics of the institution. By the 18th century, Philadelphia had become a major intellectual and commercial center. And then the political crisis between Britain and its American colonies exploded. Pennsylvania found itself at the center of the American Revolution. Philadelphia hosted the Continental Congress. In 1776, the Declaration of Independence was adopted there, and the city became the political heart of the revolutionary movement. But in 1859, Edwin Drake's famous well near Titusville successfully demonstrated that petroleum could be commercially extracted from the ground. The Pennsylvania oil boom began. Suddenly, people rushed into the region, searching for fortunes. Oil towns expanded almost overnight. The petroleum industry created new businesses, transportation networks, and wealth. But it was coal and steel that would eventually define Pennsylvania's industrial identity. And nowhere was this transformation more dramatic than Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's location was almost perfect for heavy industry. The city sat at the meeting point of three rivers and close to enormous coal deposits. Labor conflicts became a defining part of Pennsylvania's industrial history. One of the most notorious episodes occurred in 1892 at Homestead, near Pittsburgh. A violent confrontation erupted between striking steelworkers and private security forces hired by Carnegie Steel. The Homestead strike became one of the most famous labor conflicts in American history. It revealed a fundamental contradiction at the heart of Pennsylvania's industrial success. The state was becoming enormously wealthy, but the people producing that wealth were often struggling to survive. Then came the 20th century. Pennsylvania's industries became even more important. Coal-powered factories, railroads, homes, and electrical generation. Steel became essential to America's growing economy. And when the United States entered World War I and later World War II, Pennsylvania's industrial machinery became critical to the war effort. Steel mills operated at enormous capacity. Coal production surged. Factories produced weapons, machinery, ships, vehicles, and other supplies. Pennsylvania had become one of America's industrial arsenals. But every boom eventually faces a challenge. After World War II, the American economy began changing. New energy sources became more competitive. Manufacturing began moving to other regions and, eventually, overseas. Coal production declined. Steel faced increasing competition. Railroads lost some of their dominance. And the industrial cities that had once seemed unstoppable began struggling. Pittsburgh became one of the most dramatic examples. For generations, steel had defined the city. Then the steel industry collapsed. Mills closed. Workers lost their jobs. Population declined. Entire communities built around industrial production were forced to reinvent themselves. But Pennsylvania had reinvented itself before, and once again, it adapted. Pittsburgh began moving toward healthcare, education, technology, robotics, finance, and advanced manufacturing. Philadelphia expanded its role in healthcare, education, biotechnology, finance, and culture. State College and other university communities became centers of research and innovation. The economy became far more diversified, and although Pennsylvania would never again depend on coal and steel in quite the same way, the industrial age left an enormous legacy. The railroads connected America. The coal mines powered it. The oil industry helped launch the modern petroleum economy, and Pennsylvania's steel built the physical framework of modern America. Look around the United States today, and you can still see Pennsylvania's fingerprints. Bridges, railways, skyscrapers, factories, military equipment, energy infrastructure, entire cities. All were connected in some way to the industrial transformation that began more than 2 centuries ago. But Pennsylvania's story is not only about industry, it is also about freedom. The colony, founded by William Penn, became a center of religious tolerance. Philadelphia became a center of revolutionary politics. Pennsylvania became a major force in abolitionism and the Underground Railroad. Gettysburg became the site of the Civil War's most famous battle and Lincoln's historic address. And later, generations of immigrants built communities that transformed the state's culture. That is why Pennsylvania's history is so important. It is not the story of a colony that simply became a state. It is the story of a place that repeatedly reinvented itself. A colony became a revolutionary center. A farming society became an industrial powerhouse. Coal became energy. Iron became steel. Railroads connected the nation. Oil created new wealth. Immigrants became workers, entrepreneurs, and community builders. And when the industrial age began to fade, Pennsylvania began searching for its next identity. Planning your next trip? Check out the travel gear and booking links in the description. You'll find useful recommendations to help make your journey easier, and your support helps the channel grow. If you enjoyed this journey through the history of Pennsylvania, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more deeply researched stories about the states, cities, and events that shaped America. And don't forget to turn on notifications, because the next state has its own incredible story of conflict, ambition, industry, and transformation. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.